So we should be live shortly.
Okay, just let me know when you want me to start.
I think you can start now.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, greetings to all and welcome, welcome, welcome. The Arts and Letters Committee is pleased to present our April 2021 Author Spotlight, guest soror Melissa Lawson. We are so happy to have her with us today. This year, we of the Arts and Letters Committee have committed ourselves to bringing quality art events and artists to our membership body and the communities that we serve. I believe that we have delivered with author soror Melissa Lawson and the wonderful book that she wrote that we are going to be speaking about today. This will promise to be a lively discussion. Now, although this isn't a proper Queen's tea, I thought it would be nice to review the rules of tea etiquette and proper etiquette when we are at the tea. So here are some English tea's do's, some party conversations, and some tea don'ts. When taking tea, there are a few rules that you should follow to avoid looking uncouth. They're basic, but in some cases, foreign concepts to Westerners. But here are some tips. Use clotted cream. This spread for your scones is something that takes very little effort if you're going to use that. Use loose tea. Although tea bags are acceptable, loose tea is the preferred type of tea. The flavors are more pronounced and the experience of using loose tea is more elegant and adds to the experience. Steep the tea for an appropriate length of time. Let the tea settle long enough for the flavors and antioxidants to flow into the water, but don't leave it so long it gets bitter and harsh tasting. Replenish your tea. It's bad form to let the teapot go empty, so let's be aware of that today. It's always important to start with a clean pot. Eat your food properly. Finger sandwiches should be eaten with your hands and cake should be consumed with a fork. Take your time when enjoying an English tea. Here's some tea party conversation. While there is nothing wrong with bringing up controversial topics, it's still important to let the conversation escalate and make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the conversation. If you're a host of a tea party, it's always a good idea to have some discussion topics planned. Here are some English tea don'ts. There are just a few. This one's really important. Don't lift your pinky. Someone somewhere started the myth that raising the pinky finger helps balance teacup, but it's not true. So there is no point in raising it. Don't add the milk first. This is especially the case if the host pours the first cup of tea for the guest. And finally, don't stir your tea like you're beating a cake mix. Use a gentle motion and take care not to make it noisy and clinky. I hope that this helps during our Bridgerton tea discussion, and welcome to our Author Spotlight event. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Nicole Carmichael. I'm the chapter president of the Trenton Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I welcome all of you this afternoon to spend a little time. What's the tea? I'd like to welcome our author, our spotlight author, soror Melissa Lawson. Thank you for joining us today. And I'd like to welcome everyone that's joining us on the Zoom and on our social media platforms. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the event.
Greetings, everyone. I would like to start off by introducing our Mistress of Ceremony, Reverend Dr. Morella Macmillian Holmes. Reverend Dr. Macmillian Holmes is an Atlanta, Georgia native. After completing her graduate work in ministry and social work, she remained in New Jersey to continue her ministry and calling. She is a bivocational community leader and advocate. She served as a youth minister for several local New Jersey churches and was the Associate General Youth Pastor for the American Baptist Churches of New Jersey. Her most recent calling is ministering to people in the season of grief and trauma in the African American community. Currently, she is an associate minister at Shiloh Baptist Church in Trenton, New Jersey, where she is the ministry leader for the grief ministry. Reverend Dr. Holmes has held several positions in the field of social work. She served as a program director, clinical director, in-home therapist, and behavioral therapist. For the past 20 years, she has served the families and students of the Trenton Public School as a child study team and early childhood social worker. Currently, she is managing director of the Integrative Care Systems and Holistic Mental Health Agency. She received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Political Science and Education from DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana. A Master of Divinity degree from Princeton Theological Seminary, Master of Social Work from Rutgers School of Social Work, and Doctor of Ministry degree from Drew University Theological School. She is a licensed social worker in New Jersey and holds New Jersey educational certificates for school social worker, supervisor, and principal. The greatest calling in her life is a wife and mother. Reverend Dr. Macmillan Holmes is married to Mark W. Holmes Sr. and the mother of Malia and Mark Jr. Our guest for this afternoon is Melissa Lawson. Melissa Lawson is a native of Philadelphia. Her love of writing began as a teenager when she would write short stories and poems. Her love continues into adulthood when she had one of her poems, Were You There?, published in the Ex Umbra while in college at North Carolina Central University. She was truly inspired to write about her experience at the historic Million Woman March in 1998. Her debut novel, Two of Hearts, was released on May 26, 2015, to great reviews, with the sequel, Love is a Gamble, Play to Win, released October 2016. She began writing romance novels because her relationship research. The stories that she uncovered ultimately became a blog entitled My Relationship Reality. In addition to being an author, she is an educator, athletic administrator, high school counselor, and proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. Currently active in the Chester Alumni Chapter, and also served as the co-chair of the Arts and Letters Committee. Melissa currently resides in the Philadelphia area with her husband and 3 children. The third installment of the book series, No More Games, is coming soon. Welcome.
Hello, sorors and guests. How are you?
So we're going to get right to it, because I tell you, Sor Lawson, this book was full of, you guessed it, tea. So before we get started unpacking all the different plots and twists and characters, I just want to ask a couple of questions, particularly since it is such a blessing to have the author here to share insights and to just really unpack the book for us. So my first question is to you, why was it important for you to show the conflict between Kayla's two hearts?
Okay, so thanks for asking. So for me, it was really important to show a different side of women that, we typically keep, hidden because, a lot of stories that you read, obviously you read a lot of stories of entanglements, but you read a lot of stories, it's mostly men. And, and how women are dealing with, situations with men. But it was important to me to show that, all of us have these sort of torn hearts. We whether we want to admit it or not, there has been, many situations where women have been torn between two people, and whether or not they're making the right decision. And I just felt like it was important to, bring that story and bring that truth, to the people, because, lots of people read it and were, torn between two hearts.
So on that same theme, why do you think good girls are drawn to not so good men?
Well, so I would have to say it depends on whether or not you think that, one of the characters is not so good. Um, so it depends, because I mean, ultimately, I don't think women we don't set out to choose between good and bad. Like, I think we choose like what's good for us at the time, what feels good, right? So it doesn't really matter that someone checks all the boxes on a on paper, and they are the perfect person to the outside world. What makes us feel good may not look good on the outside, may not be the person that has all the things, may not be the person that has all that checks all the boxes. He may be the trash man. He may be just because we are at a certain place in our lives doesn't mean that that person can't be good for us because he doesn't match our educational or even financial, status.
So we're going to get straight into the characters now. So we know some of the main characters of course, Kayla, and she's torn between her heart that loves Sal and her heart that loves Vincent. So my question is, why do you think well, you wrote the book, so you know, right? Why was it so difficult for Kayla to be transparent about her feelings with Sal to Vincent?
So I think the difficulty, honestly, for Kyla was that she could not, like, she didn't want to accept it, right? She didn't want to believe that, you know, this is this guy was right for her, but she didn't want to accept the fact that if she told him like any of the history, because of who Vince was to her and his background and all those things, I don't think she felt like he could accept that reality. So even though she felt like, okay, I might have been moving on, I'm not sure that he will understand my past or my history or the things that I had done in my past because of the type of person he was. So I think that's what it more or less boiled down to. I'm not I'm not sure he's ready. I think because women, and this may not be true, but I believe women feel that men can't handle the truth.
Hmm. Hmm. So I can't wait to read the sequel to see if Vincent really can handle the truth. But I want to leave that alone. So I want to really you talked about these sort of relationship expectations that we sort of put on one another, particularly when it comes to our gender roles. So I just want to play with a little bit. And I really like the fact how you showcase different types of relationship models in your book. You know, we have Kayla's parents, the traditional family that's there, and then we have Sal's parents, which was a little rocky, but definitely loved each other. And then we have Vincent's parents. So could you just talk a little bit about why you felt it was very important to show those types of Black love models?
I felt like it was important to show different families because, we have different family types. We have different family values. And I think that people tend to tie behaviors to family values. So, and those behaviors don't always match, right? So, like in Kyla's case, her parents were a certain type, but she and her sister were very different, and they were very in it wasn't necessarily in line with what her parents were, preaching and doing. So I think that it was important to show, and like even with Sal's parents, all those things that happened in his life and his, and the things that, happened with his parents and stuff like that. But, he still came out and he still came out, a different person. And I felt like he shouldn't have been written off. I mean, a lot of women have written him off after reading the story. But I felt like it was important to, to showcase, and also that helps to shape why the characters think a certain way. Because when you look at Vince's parents, for instance, this kind of lets you know like why he is the way he is and why he has these expectations on Kyla to be a certain way.
Speaking of Kyla being a certain way and Vincent's expectation, I love how you show the conflicting viewpoints that Black women have, as opposed to being a professional woman or being a family woman. So could you talk a little bit about why that was important for you to show and to tell and put that piece in Kyla's narrative, that here she was, an entertainment attorney who was doing her thing, and now that she's married, Vincent has sort of these gender role conflicts. Could you talk a little bit about why that was important for that narrative to be a part of Kyla's story?
So I think it was important for me because, and this is something that my husband and I, over the last year, have been talking about, societal expectations on marriage, right? What is it? What does it look like? And where do people get these ideas from? Because these are things that are either absorbed from society, and a lot of it is patriarchy, honestly. So, marriage is very patriarchal. And I think that for me, it was important to show that women can have careers, women can have all these things and still be married and still have, still have children and things of that nature, but they shouldn't be pressured into doing these things. They shouldn't be, they shouldn't feel obligated to, fall back from their careers. But ultimately, society sets it up so that women, kind of have to shrink to be married and have, and have children. And that's really unfortunate because, Vince can go on and be and do like even, subsequent novels, you'll see he's going on to be great. And so for her, she ends up, if she, conforms to that thought process, then she ends up not on the partner track. She ends up, staying at home, taking care of kids and sort of losing who she is. So I felt like it was important to show that we don't have to lose who we are as women in order to, have a family, but you have to be on the same page with your partner. And that's where the conflict comes in, because a lot of times we don't have these conversations. It sounds good in theory, but in practice, once we're in the marriage, then these expectations come out of nowhere.
Wow. And just wow. I mean, this book dealt with so many things, and that is so relevant and so pressing in our community, and particularly for Black women. And I just want to say thank you for sort of bringing that, our reality, to paper and to story, because so much of our truths can be seen in fiction. But I just want to really talk about, because we are deltas and we are sorors and we are sisters, that special relationship that Kyla has with Alexis. Why was it important to show that type of sisterly bond, that type of sisterly confidence? And just talk a little bit about that very special, unique relationship between the two of them.
So, I mean, for me, it was important. I have a sister, so I felt like, I mean, this Alexis wouldn't necessarily be, exactly like my sister, but she does have some qualities. But I think it's important to know, like, if you're looking at the relationship dynamic, like they're very different. Like my sister and I, very different people. Um, we like different things. We like different types of men, that type of thing. But I think the important part is showing someone has your back. Like you have a confidant, someone that you can go to, you can talk to, because it's really important. If you don't feel like in the story, she needed to have somebody that she can say these things to. She needed to talk to somebody because, her parents weren't going to necessarily be open to, the things that she had to keep in confidence. So, to have her sister there, to have her sister support, but also I think she, had to have someone that could actually be a truth teller, someone that could tell her, hey, listen, no. Like, even if she doesn't want to hear it, you have to have somebody that's willing to tell you the truth. Because if everyone that is in your circle, most likely your friends and that kind of thing, they're not going to necessarily be honest with you. They don't mind. Not all your friends will, care if you fail, but, and you'll see that in the subsequent story. But ultimately, it's important to showcase somebody having your back.
Mm, mm. So before we open it up to, I have so many. I just want to touch on a couple of things. Um, why is it important to tell our stories from our perspective? When I say our African American women, why is it important to tell our story and our narrative to the world?
So, I mean, for me, it was important to, tell the story from, kind of the I ain't gonna say the everyday woman, right? But for us, because there are a lot of stories that get attention in the Black community, right? And they aren't necessarily working women, women that do, women that are just your everyday, family. We see a lot of stories in how people portray us, and unfortunately sometimes our own we could be our own worst enemies portraying ourselves that way. But a lot of stories that portray the drug dealers and guns and incarceration and all that. But there is just a really everyday story that people need to see and hear. Like, there's everyday people doing everyday things, having real relationship conflict, real stories that resonate with people, and people read it and they feel like, okay, I understand this because I'm dealing with this, or I have dealt with this, or I know people who are dealing with this. So it was important for me, and my husband, he always says, you want the story to feel as real as possible. You want people to feel like they are in the story, they can see the story, they can feel the story, they can taste the food. So, and I'm a visual writer. So I try to make the readers feel like they are a part of the story.
So I'm happy you sort of transitioned that for me, because your writing is so, it takes you in, it pulls you in. And the way you pay attention to detail is amazing. It's almost like you took me back to like my 80s. You took me back to the 80s when, they were on the playground, and that process. How do you get it so on the point? Like, it was perfectly written, and it was written in such a way that I immediately went to that memory back in the 80s. So talk to us a little bit about how was that process for you, and how does that come to paper, because it was done so well.
So for me, like, when I'm writing, I kind of have an idea of what I want to write in mind, and then I like outline it, and then I kind of decide where I want conflicts and things of that nature to be. But music is the key to me. So music is my love language. So when I'm listening to music, I am totally recalling everything that ever happened to me in my life, and because we all do it. So music unlocks a part of your brain that you don't even realize. Like, it really it unlocks that memory. So when you hear a certain song, you like, yo, I remember when I was at we was at the corner store and we, you know, like you think of all, like, I remember we were jumping double dutch and such was playing, you know, like you can remember so many things with music. So I do have like it's like a 25-hour playlist, no lie. And so, you know, and it just plays randomly, but I do a lot of that. And then for me, I like to do things again that's relatable. So, you know, when I did a lot of flashbacks, thinking about when in the 80s and, you know, when we were kids and like, what would we have been doing? We would have been in school. We would have been, you know, fake holding hands. We would have been in these little, you know, fake relationships. And so I had to think about all the things, you know, walking home from school and all the kids around me. So those are the things that I kind of embodied the experiences of every single character.
Nice. It shows. It absolutely shows. And thank you. So I want to transition a little bit from the questions and get into the meat of the story because I tell you, there's some stuff going on here. So, you know, so what's really struck me is how they met. And, you know, clearly Sal was somebody else's boyfriend trying to step to Kayla. So just want to stay right there for a minute because from day one, Sal was gonna be a little problem. And I was wondering sort of that process for us when, you know, how do you sort of see the guy who's with, clearly he was with the other girl, clearly, but he was trying to step to Kayla. So why was that important in the story to sort of set up, because that's our first introduction of Sal.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of slimy, but not really, you know, because he was really sweet to Kayla, right? He was really sweet to her. But you know, he was with Tiffany. So I'm just trying to figure out, are you trying to have your cake and eat it too? Or it's like a setup for the type of relationship they're gonna have. Given that he wants his cake and he wants his pie and he wants his ice cream.
So it's interesting that you point that out because I mean it is a setup. You know, women are interesting. We're interesting beings. We, you know, we pretend that flags aren't there, and we don't actually, you know, see flags. You know, they could be, you know, somebody could just hand you the flag and you'd be like, oh, is this a flag? So you don't even realize that it's a flag. You're like, oh, okay, maybe it's a handkerchief, but at the end of the day, you know, as young as she was, you know, when you think of first love, you don't even think of flags, right? You think, oh, somebody cares for me. He's this and he's that. You don't even take relationships serious in 7th grade or whatever, 7th, 8th grade. I mean, my children are in the 7th grade right now, and they think they like girls, but I mean, really, how serious is that? So when I think about that, the setup to that relationship, and funny enough, though, the first interaction that we have with Sal is actually not, you know, is actually in the elevator, right? So you don't, you kind of almost feel sorry for him, and then until you find out who he, you know, who he started off as. But he deeply cared for her. So I think that she was really clouded by that initial relationship and the bond that they had, you know, as children. And that bond, she just took that bond and brought it into adulthood. And it just never became a mature relationship.
You know, I don't want to beat up Sal, you know, too much, but he's so good to beat up on, right? Because so, you know, it's almost like, I don't know your intent, but it's almost like he knew she was going to be at the restaurant. He just happened to have a construction job there and that happened to run into her at the elevator and to elicit all of this. So let me just sit on Sal for a little bit, right? They're together, but he goes and get married in Las Vegas. I just want to, you know, come on now, talk to me, Soror. Come on now, come on.
So yeah, like interestingly enough, like that's loosely based on a real life situation. So, so like I know of a situation like that. So you know, and funny enough, so many people have read this story and they was like, yeah, I was dating this guy. Like we were just talking at a party recently, and a young lady was telling me about a situation where the person texted her like, yeah, I can't, talk right now. My parents are in town. Oh, okay. Well, he's in town. They're in town for an engagement party. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, who got engaged? Oh, I did. Now, okay. So, it's this kind of thing. So, this is, men tell half truths all the time. So, we couldn't, this is not a phenomenon that's, that isn't happening, because people do have other relationships that they never tell you about. And so, in their case though, I think is, he didn't see them as in a relationship. He just saw her as kind of like his forever girl. And she would always be there no matter what the situation was. She was always going to be available. She was always going to be there because she was just his forever girl. No matter what was going on in his life, he could always count on her to still be there. And so that situation with the wife that lasted 3 seconds, she wasn't going to be important because he didn't even mention her. So
right. And then just back, what happens in Vegas obviously doesn't stay in Vegas. So they go back to Vegas, and he wasn't even divorced yet. So just like, oh, are you kidding me? She's about to do all of this and he's not even divorced yet. And and I just love how you just always pack on the drama for us, Sora. Not only they're not divorced, but she's pregnant. I was like, are you kidding me? Can it get any better, right? So, I want to get off Sal for a little bit because, we've been on Sal. Let's talk about this Vincent, who has all the dressings of the perfect gentleman. But, so why was it important to contrast such different men that she loved?
Well, so I think it was important for me to contrast them because in all actuality, they're different, but they're the same. So when you look at all of the things that that Vince brings to the table, he's just different because he has it all together. He has a college degree, he has all these things. He has the 2-parent households, but when you get into the second story, you'll find out he's not much different than Sal. He just looks really good on paper. So, when it comes down to, it's the heart wants what the heart wants, right? And it doesn't matter what the heart looks like. It matters what the heart feels like. That's important.
Wow. Now that's some good stuff right there. So I want to talk about Vincent and sort of his overreaction. And I don't want to give it all away because I know some people may not have read the book, but you know what? Spoiler alert, it's going to happen. But there are 2 more pieces. So if you didn't read the first one, guess what? There's another one and the one after that. So, hey, so why was he so torn up about the box? Like, why was that a pivot? Like, he went from 0 to 60 in a matter of seconds. Like, divorce you, is the baby mine? I mean, he went from like 0 to 60 without even having a conversation or even asking. I don't know if I'm setting up a book 2, but why did he sort of go there so fast?
So, again, we talked about how men can't handle the truth, right? So, they don't, it's this sort of patriarchy again, right? So, you're my wife. I own you in a sense. And there is no other person who can come in between us because you're mine. And the idea that that could happen is just unfathomable. And because I'm territorial and I just can't take it, I just don't want to be bothered anymore. So not even to hear her out, like the way that the story ended, like, I don't even want to hear it. Bye. Like, I'm trying to tell you that this is not how it is, and you just don't even want to hear it. Because, again, men can't handle the truth. Had he listened to her, we wouldn't even be in book 2. So but luckily he didn't listen, and then book 2 got a little, got very dramatic. So, we have to just understand, men are very sensitive, whether they want to believe it or not. They're very sensitive. And, women, we are, because we're communicators naturally, we want to hear it. So we want to hear all the things. So if we caught you cheating, we want to know who she is, what she look like, where she come from, who her mama, what college did she go to? Well, where was y'all at when this happened? I need to understand. Was there a baby involved? Like, does the baby look like you? Did you get a DNA test? Like, you want all the questions. Men don't want to hear none of it. So that's just part of the communication difference between men and women, really. And I think that's what I was more or less showcasing, because if men were better communicators, he would have been willing to communicate with that.
Oh man, amen. Thank you. So we're going to transition a little bit to the MA rating of the discussion. The MA rating. A little bit about our sexuality as Black women, and sort of how we sort of deal with our sexuality, and how does it evolve? How do we own it? How do we claim it as ours? And sort of, Kayla, through that whole sequence, Kayla really didn't know what was going on. In fact, she had sort of given Sal all of her power, even in that initial intimate moment. So if you could talk a little bit about particularly Black women's sexuality, because I think society has over-sexualized the Black woman, and some of it, and then we have internalized that and made that some of our truth, which is not. And to see Kayla, who I think she did love Sal, even at that very young age, but to own her sexuality and to give it away so freely, and to be tied to him, even as an adult woman. Could you talk to that a little bit?
So for me, it was important to talk, one, I work with young people, and then, just looking at experiences with young women, we tend to, we view sex and sexuality in the context of love a lot, right? And so, and these are stories, again, your parents never told you. So these are things we're talking about. My children have a different level of access to sex conversations than I would have had, or my parents would have had. And so even in the story, like, her parents were very, rigid, like, we're not even talking about sex around here. So, so then that leads you to experiment, to end up finding somebody that you think you're in love with, then you end up doing it at such a young age. And then, the outcomes that, come from that. And then you feel emotionally tied to him forever, because, that is the first experience you've ever had. So now you feel so emotionally connected to him. And then, the other parts of the story that, connect you to him, where men and women view sex very differently. It's not for us, it's very emotional. For them, it's very physical. So the emotional labor that women go through connecting with men, unless you have had some trauma in your life where you don't have that, where you don't get that response from sex, women tend to tie sex to, feelings, and deeper feelings, and the deeper connections. And the more times you do it, the more connected you feel to this individual. So I think that that's what kept her coming back to him, and then her feeling more liberated with him sexually than she did even with her own husband, because the things that they were doing was just wild. That wasn't necessarily the things that she did with her husband. So, but I felt like that was more or less attributed to the comfortability she had with him since she was a teenager.
All right. So now we're going to open it up to some questions so refill your tea, because like Dina said, make sure your teapot does not go empty. So this would be a good time to refill your beverage of choice. It could be tea. Hold on, let me hold my top here because I don't want to knock down. It could be tea, it could be coffee. I know Angelica said that she had coffee. So let's take this time to refill our beverage, and then we're going to get into some questions and about the book. Okay? And don't hold that pinky up, right, Dina? Because you don't need that pinky to balance it, right? Don't hold it up. I got you. Okay. So how do you want to put the questions? You just want to unmute yourself, ask the question, and then mute yourself back. That may be better. So yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So if you want to ask a question, unmute yourself, ask the question, and then go back on mute so we don't get a lot of feedback.
What is the name of the second book again?
The name of the second book is Love is a Gamble, Play to Win.
Okay. Thank you. I enjoyed the book. I mean, I couldn't put it down once I got started reading it. I really loved it.
Thank you.
Hi, Melissa. You know I was coming.
Hey,
Melissa and I have a relationship for a very long time. And this is my second time reading the book. Soras Don't Hate Me. I am Team Sal. And I know I'm very few that are Team Sal. Believe me, Melissa knows I've had some spirited discussion with folks, but I've always been Team Sal. I guess my question to you is, I've said this before, I felt like I was reading my story from my college days, but that's a whole nother story. How was the process of just coming up with this story? Because it really is so relatable. I have a lot of friends who are thinking about writing, and I tell them, write what you know. And obviously this story, I mean, anyone who attended a HBCU or hell, even my college is referenced in their Lincoln, we all know this story. So how was the process of just coming up with the concept of the story?
So honestly, the process was, so it was just me thinking about, well, once I was writing the blog and things, and people were like following the blog, they were like, oh, okay, you should write you should write a book. So, and the blog really talked about a lot of these different sort of, dynamics in relationships. But when I really sat down and thought about like, what could I write about? So I thought about, this sort of story where, someone has a because I kept hearing that a lot. I kept seeing friends and even myself, as a young person looking at, this sort of relationship dynamic between, not this good guy and bad guy situation, but who's good for me and who's not good for me. And, so I wanted to bring that story to light. And I wanted to showcase different angles of, how you can be in love. Because I think, I am Team Sal. I hate to say it. But of course, I wrote Sal, so I'm going to be Team Sal. I think that what people don't get in the story, and the thing that I really wanted to highlight, I made more people mad at Sal than anything, but he actually loved her really hard. He loved her very hard, and I don't think he knew what a true relationship was. I don't think he had an example. I don't think he knew how to love. I think he was in love though. I think between the two of them, he had the greatest love for her. And I just don't think he knew what to do with it. So, I think that was important for me. And that's why I'm Team Sal, because he was very vulnerable. And I think if women look past the whole, his upbringing, if you think about it, Sal got money. Listen, his parents owned the business and he don't have no student loans. So Sal got money. So that's where my process came. It really comes from experience and listening to people. And because I'm actually considering doing a compilation of actual people's stories.
I agree. I am Team Sal. I think he's a little slimy. I don't necessarily, I have a love-hate relationship with Sal because I think his character, out of all the characters, he is really complex, right? Because he's selfish in that he will do whatever he wants to get what he needs, right? The fact that he took her out to Vegas knowing he was a divorce. So he was just never truly honest with her because he really wanted her so badly that I don't think he could be truly honest with, or felt like he could be truly honest with her. And then the nerve to show up at her wedding, right? Like it was always about him. But then I saw the other side of him where he was raising his child. And I was like, okay, there's some redeeming qualities there because here you're showing another side where you're not just thinking about yourself, because it would have been easy for him to be like, all right, and I think his ex-wife's name was Angela or Angie, you're out in Vegas, you can raise the child, I'll send you a few dollars here and there. But he actually took on the responsibility of raising the child. So I have a love-hate relationship with Sal. He's complex.
I appreciate that, because that's the goal, was to make him a complex character, like not one-dimensional, some sort of just random ex-drug dealer who was in love with a lawyer. Like that would have just been too easy. But for me, it was the complex emotions that you don't expect to see a character like Sal be so vulnerable, right? You don't expect the level of vulnerability, which makes him very different from Vince, because you don't actually see that vulnerability in him. You see it like he does things, outward manifestations, flowers and this and that, but he's not as vulnerable emotionally and with her as I think Sal is, which is one of the things I think maybe her love language. So that's also something very important to take into consideration. What is one's love language? That I think drives the relationship between, two people, because while, as I'm, getting older and realizing my husband and I had two different love languages. And finally we had to just really discuss that. Like, hey, we're not even on the same page. We don't have the same love language. Like it does, because you're not appreciating the things I'm doing for you, and I'm not appreciating the things you're doing for me, because they're not the things that we appreciate. So at the very least, I think her love language was more what Sal was given. Now the sliminess, different story. I think, again, men are, willingly deceptive to get what they want. They say what they say anything or do anything to get the things that they can benefit from. And for him, the benefit would have been her. But I think he was reluctant and afraid, because he didn't think that she was going to, he couldn't end up with her. I think that in the end, I don't think he thought he could end up with her. So he never really tried.
Yeah, that's interesting. One other comment that I wanted to make is that I love the dialogue between them, the banter. I like the way you delve into that aspect, which we didn't really see with Vince, right? She didn't have that kind of dialogue with Vince the way she did with Sal.
Yeah, again, I think that had everything to do with their, them being very vulnerable with each other enough to have this, to have the wherewithal to be able to speak to each other like that. That's why I believe, again, the relationship was so very different and served her in a different purpose.
I have to
I have a question. When you're starting with a blank page, writing a story, do you start with knowing where you want the characters to end up, or and then you figure out how to get them there, or do you develop them as you're writing the story?
So I think that is, so I kind of decide who the characters are. And then I like, what are they going to do? What purpose are they going to serve? Like what do they look like? What kind of career they're gonna have? How are they related? That kind of thing. And then from there, as I'm putting them into the story, like as I literally write the story in acts, like I'm writing a play, like, so there's act 1, 2, and 3. And so as I know, like where I want to start and where I want to end, right?
Okay.
And I start to develop them as we go through the story. Like what do I want to happen in scene to scene? And then that tells me how I need to develop the character.
Thank you. I was always interested in character development and stories, so that's interesting.
Thank you.
I have a question and comment. My first comment is there's a survey that I did post in the chat. So if everyone can please complete the survey, we would really appreciate that. But then I also, speaking of Sal, I love how flawed that you made him. It's so interesting. It's more interesting to read about and learn about a character who has so many flaws, because we all have flaws and imperfections. And I think, and when you speak of his love language and how he related to Kayla, and I feel like it was the vulnerability of, here was a child who grew up with a big part of his life without his dad in his life, right? The man to help guide him. Do you feel like that impacted his relationship with her, and how, I don't know, how he wasn't always able to express himself in the right way or do things how we would think would be the right way in his relationship with her?
I think honestly that has a big part of him, and any man for that matter, or woman. I think that how we relate to people has a lot to do with maybe deficits that we have within relationship, to other trusted adults. So a lot of times, like every circumstance can be blamed on fatherlessness, right?
Yeah, you're right.
But,
Right.
but there is a dynamic that you do see where even men who grew up without fathers, who are fathers themselves, or they had a strained relationship with fathers, like they don't have an example of fatherhood, so they kind of like feeling their way through, and it doesn't really, it may work or may not, like it's just kind of hit or miss. It's the same kind of thing in relationship with women. If you don't have a man or male figure in your life that, or you don't have an example of that, because even if the father wasn't around, and like maybe his mom had a boyfriend who was helping to shape who he was going to be, I think that if there was some examples that he could pull from where he saw, which is what we've seen with Vince, he was mirroring his parents' relationship because that's what he saw and that's what he wanted. And his mother was extremely vocal, and you could see her in the next book doing the most. But the Sal character, he didn't have that. So he was just always kind of feeling his way through life, and just kind of advocating for himself. So, and whatever that looks like. So I think for him, the way he advocated for himself, I think he had to move and shake a lot in his life. And I think he moved and shaked in relationship. And that's how he ended up being the person he was. I don't think he genuinely loved her, but I don't think he had the wherewithal to stop and say, let me sit down and do this the right way.
So I just want to. I haven't declared a team yet. Okay. But I always said the two good boys always. I think that there's a string pull away of unraveling. So I'm not really, but I do like some of Sal. I like Sal, and I just want to talk about his relationship with his mom, because I don't want us to miss that. And how his mom was really trying to be there for him. Like, for instance, making sure his milestone moments were memorable. Making sure he had a birthday party, making sure they went out to Red Lobster to eat, to celebrate. So I don't, when we talk about the absence of a father, I definitely want to show how you know, how his mom was there too. And I don't want us to miss that particular dynamic, because I think there was that relationship is important, because she, you know, she made sure, although his dad was a little interesting, she was constant. She was very constant for him. And whatever love language that developed, I think she was the impetus of that love language.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, I think that that's important because, you know, as single mothers, you know, I watch single mothers all the time raising sons, and you know, my mother-in-law was a single mother, so you know, and I see the product of her, you know, of her raising, because I am married to her son, so I know like what that means, and I also know what that means for, you know, who he is as a person, and what, you know, what strengths and weaknesses that, you know, entails also, because you know, sometimes as single mothers, you know, we can be, not we, but you know, what single mothers can be, you know, hard on, you know, boys, or too soft on boys. You know, they can overcompensate or undercompensate depending on, you know, who they are, and their experiences and their support system. So I think a lot of who we are as people does depend on, you know, relationship. But I also think a lot of it is just kind of, you know, trial and error, because there is no handbook for how to create another human to be who they're going to be. Like at some point they just be, and then you're just like, oh, okay. I hope I did a good job and I didn't kill you.
I want to talk about her girlfriends, because there's clearly that one girlfriend. You know, yes, there's that sister relationship she has with Alexis, but it's also that other girlfriend that she confides in, and you know, she seems a little too willing to take the tea. And I don't, you know, I don't want to spoil anything in the next couple of books, but you know, clearly when they go out to the bar, because I think this is the girlfriend that picked up the waiter. I can't remember which girlfriend picked up the waiter. But but the girlfriend who knows the other side of the story. I think Alexis knows one side, but the other girlfriend who knows the other side of the story. And to me, she just I don't know if her motive's clear. So could you just talk about how one person doesn't hold all your truths?
You know, so we always have these. I mean, a lot of us, you know, I mean, we're in a sorority, right? So we have lots of, you know, sorors and people that we, you know, confide in, and or they don't even have to be sorors; they could just be friends. And you know, we always have, women are very good at, you know, finding a village. All right, so these are my people. They are my secret keepers. These are the people that, you know, I can go to, and that know all the tea and know where the bodies are buried. But that can be a detriment. You know, sometimes, you know, your best friend can end up being your worst enemy. Your best friend can be somebody that, you know, is secretly hating on you in the background, and secretly wants your life and can't wait to tell somebody about the stuff you're doing in it. So you have to be careful, you know, doing too much. But I mean, we all need a confidant. We all need that, you know, if it can't be your sister, you know, it can be somebody that, you know, you feel comfortable with. And apparently she felt very comfortable, you know, sharing all these things. But you can read between some of the lines. You can see, you know, where, you know, it could be on shaky ground. If, you know, if that ice got broken, it might not end up the way she wanted. So, and not to give anything away in book 2, but you might want to follow their relationship to that second story. So.
But I mean, the foreshadowing was there. So if you followed the breadcrumbs, you're like, let's go to see where is this going? Where is this relationship going? So I would just want to add, any other questions? Any other questions? No more questions? Because you know, I can keep going, y'all. So I don't want to keep going. So, you know, any other questions?
Oh, I had one. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how you derived at the fact, the infertility issue, right, which a lot of women in our community suffer with that. And I thought the way you used that as a way to disclose that what she had done with Sal, I mean, you hinted at it earlier parts of the book, but then it wasn't clear until when she was struggling with infertility, that was a result of something that happened to her when she was younger. So if you could talk a little bit about that and just sort of your process in how that unfolded.
So it was really important to me, honestly, to put to bring infertility to the story. Don't ask me why. But the reason why, well, I myself had an issue with infertility. And so as I was going through the story, I just felt compelled to say, hey, Black women, we suffer, we have infertility issues. And not necessarily because it was a secret or I went through what she went through, but, it was just, something I dealt with. And so in order for me to, to like let Black women feel comfortable hearing, seeing, because we never really talk about, there's support groups out here for, women, but they don't necessarily look like us. And I just felt like it was important that, sometimes you have to be honest and we tell our truths. And for me, that was one of my truths. Like that for me was so important that I, just made that part of the story that, hey, infertility, and how literally the part of the story and how she found out she was pregnant and all that, like that was actually me. So, right, going through Target, all that. And so it was for me, I was like, that is really, really important that women understand that you can keep going, you can keep trying. It's not over, until God says it's over. And, I ended up with twin boys and then I had a daughter out of nowhere. I don't know where she came from, but I am so happy to have her because that she was clearly infertility was cured at that point.
So, I mean, you really deal with so many of those subjects that we don't talk about in our community. Abortion, we don't talk about in our community. Infidelity, we don't talk about in our community. Our sexuality, we don't talk about in our community. These societal imposed gender roles, we don't talk about them. But I want to talk about how Kayla was almost a superwoman, how she was really the character that sort of had to do it all. And how do we sort of prevent ourselves or know some of the warning signs when we're turning into that superwoman? Like when we're about to go into the phone booth. Yes, I'm gonna date myself. When we're about to go into the phone booth and take out our off our clothes and reveal our Superman shield, Superwoman shield. What are some of the warning signs? Because some of it was Kayla was trying to please everyone but herself. And that is always the story of so many Black women, professional Black women, and I want to put that there, but I also want to stop for a minute because I want to talk about the brother, because we almost forget that there's a brother in the family. So I want to come back to the brother because he makes like 2 appearances in the whole book. But I just really want to talk about how do we what are some of the warning signs so that we don't fall into the trap of being that super Black woman?
So some of the warning signs, honestly, if you find yourself doing entirely too much and then you're exhausted all the time, you're cranky, and you find yourself just in a space where every minute of the day is filled with something for somebody else and not you, then that's really, kind of the biggest warning sign. I think when I turned 40, 5 years ago was when I realized I'm doing too much. So, and I was trying to be everything to everybody, right? I wanted to like literally solve the world's problems, and I wanted to be there for everybody. I wanted to be this. I wanted to be there for the kid. I wanted to be a super mom, and and it was impacting me being a super wife. And then it was I was trying to be super school counselor, super cheerleading coach, super author. Like I was doing so many things, and I was always so tired. And then I, like, at some point I became exhausted. And I was like, that's it. Like, I cannot, because if I continue down this road, like, I'm not going to be good to anybody. And so when you find yourself at the point of, this is not good for me, I'm tired, I'm angry, and I have no time for myself, it's time to, put your suit back on and and do your Wonder Woman spin backwards. Hang your lasso up and go lay down, because that's not it. So,
So now I want to come back to the brother, because we almost forget he's even there, because he's down there living in North Carolina. He's not married. Wonder why he's not married. Are we going to talk about something there in the next book? Don't know. But, but why, are we going to see more of the brother? Because we only got like, not even a glimpse. It was like a blur. He came in at the wedding, and then he was out again in North Carolina, and they make these, sort of comments about him, like he was maybe a protector, but then that's it. Like we don't get much else about the brother.
he does show up again in book 2, a little bit more. I mean, he's not like a major part of the story. He's really a super supporting cast member, but it's important to show that she has the brother, because he is, he was kind of like this sort of protection mechanism. But in book 2 you do see a little bit more of him, and who, what he's into and what he's doing, and you get a little sense of how he's connected to her in ways that you don't really see in the first story.
Other questions? Let me see what's in here. Okay. No more. Okay, so no more questions. Really? None? Okay.
It's a lot to unpack, so I understand. There are many things that could be, asked and answered. But at the end of the day, I just, want everybody to feel like they've gotten something out of the story. They felt connected to the character. They felt like it was something, that they appreciated reading, that they didn't feel like they went through and read a story and it was a waste of their time. So it's important that, I hopefully connected with you all in a way that, you'll tell a friend.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I have to tell you, I'm definitely going to be telling lots of people about this book, because once I started reading it, like someone else had mentioned, I couldn't put it down. I literally read this book in a day and a day and a half, just because I loved all of the nuggets that you gave to us. Just when you thought that they were comfortable, bam, you would throw something else at us. And it was it was a wonderful read. It was an exciting read. I was crying. My mouth was like, oh, I wanted to throw the book across the room. I was upset with Kayla. I was upset with Sal. I would get frustrated with Vince, but it was just a testament to how well-rounded that you had developed your characters, that they were so relatable. And I was down in that basement when they were all down in the basement for the house party. It just reminded me of so many different moments from my childhood, and just that you were able to bring us back to that time and really paint a beautiful picture of what that past was like for most of us who are many of us who are here on this call. But no, thank you. It was really, truly a wonderful read, and I enjoyed it.
I appreciate that. It's funny. I read one of the reviews on Amazon, and somebody said they called out of work to finish the book. I was like, "Oh, girl, don't get fired." No. She was like, "I couldn't put it down. I had to call out of work." I'm like, "Don't write that on the review. I don't want you to get fired."
I had to give my children some extra study work yesterday in class so that I could just do some more reading in the book, just because it was just something. It was like, okay, boys and girls. But no, again, it was just something you just couldn't put it down once you picked it up. It was really, really.
And someone referenced it made their relationship closer to their husband because it was so steamy. I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I love the way. Go ahead, Dana. No, I just love. Go ahead. You finished, Dina? I just love how the manner in which you pin the intimate moments, because that's a gift. Not everyone can write, and to give that visual of the intimate moment. I'm thinking like right now, I'm visualizing the hotel room in New York. I know, kind of shady, but that's right there. So I'm visualizing the hotel in New York, and then I'm visualizing the hotel room in Vegas. But woo, okay, Sal and Kayla. But I think that is a testament to your giftedness in writing, to bring something that is so taboo in our community and write it in such a way that 3 weeks after I've read it, that visual is still there because it was so well written.
Oh, well, thank you. It was hard trying to, someone just said the second book is already out. The second book came out. So it's the third book I'm working on now. But so Love is a Gamble is already out if you want to, jump right into following them on after that box opened up. Writing those scenes were actually the toughest because I did not want to jump into erotica. So I was like, I don't want to be vain, but I needed to be explicit so that you can see it. But by the time I got to book 2, I was like, we just gonna say it. Okay. So it's a little bit more explicit in book 2.
All right. Listen, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm so thankful that you write our stories from our perspective. It is so nice to read and to see myself in that book, to music, the music, the things that are sort of nuanced to our culture, the scenes in the playground, the basement parties, as Dina said. I think it is so refreshing to see our stories in print and and how we're able to relate it, and it becomes part of us. So thank you for sharing your gift with us. I'm looking forward to. I didn't want to do book 2 because I have a big mouth, and I would have talked about and probably spilled some of book two. So I deliberately haven't read it yet because I just didn't want to do it. But I'm just so thankful that we came across your book, that we're able to support you. And please, I know this won't be the last time, and I'm going to turn it over to the committee chairs because I have just had the best time in this conversation and you sharing your insight, your writing process, character development, but also the most important thing is sharing that we could see our stories. Because growing up, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I did not see any. First of all, I wasn't a member of the itty bitty titty committee, so that did not work for me. And I just did not see myself in any of those. And I love Judy Blume, and I cried when Beverly Cleary died. But it is so nice to see my story written. So thank you so much for sharing that gift. And I'm going to turn it over to the committee.
No, thank you so much. Thank you, Sora Holmes, for moderating. Thank you, Sora Lawson, for just, sharing your gift with us, sharing your gift with the world. I just posted in the chat that I bought your second book just now on Amazon. So it will arrive on Tuesday. And so I'm excited to open it up and start reading all about Kayla and Vince and Sal's next chapter in their life. But thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we're so grateful for everyone who joined us on the call and for our author spotlight. I would like to bring in Sora Goodson, who, along with Sora Holmes, helped to really bring this event together. Sora Goodson, would you like to say something?
It was a pleasure, and thank you, Sora Lawson, for being so gracious and agreeing to appear here today. It was just such a wonderful read, and the chapter does look forward. I can see that someone put in the chapter that we need a chapter book discussion when everyone reads book 2.
I'll be
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely be reading book 2, and thank you again to all of the chapter and the community who came out to listen to the author spotlight. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I totally appreciate, humbly from the bottom of my heart, everyone who's read it and everyone who will read book 2, and just how invested you all have gotten into the story. Like I always say, I have visions of seeing this as a Netflix series someday.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I was
yes.
going to ask you. Are you in talks
Yes.
with having this, having the first book or the second book developed into film or a series of some kind?
So I have spoken to a few people, and I mean that this is what everyone has said. I'd love to see this on TV. Like I could see it, I can visualize it. So, it's just hopefully getting into the right space and the right place and into the hands of the right people. So, um, you know, whatever God has planned for this story is what we will do. So if it's TV or if it's a movie, I am totally prepared for that. So anybody out there in Facebook,
Right.
just call me.
Absolutely.
Believe me, because normally as you read, you have all of these people that you have in your mind of who's going to play who. I'm still trying to figure out who Sal would be. That's still trying to figure out.
I've picked my Sal character already.
Okay. I was running through the list of male actors that as I was reading, just trying to figure out who would he fit, who would fit him.
Tyler Lepley, the guy who plays Diamond on P-Valley.
Oh, okay.
He also plays the Have and Have Nots. He's also the son on Have and Have Not.
Okay. So I had Michael Ealy. I don't know, just the eyes.
He's old.
He is old. He is old. He's old. Yes, but the eyes is what I was trapped on, the eyes. But no, again, like you said, we're so grateful and thankful. The Trenton Alumni Chapter Arts and Letters Committee is just grateful to have had you with us today. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, can we do a plug for our upcoming event? So we have a community gardening event on April 28th at 6 p.m. It will be virtual. And so please do check out our Facebook page for information about that. And we also have a Juneteenth celebration on June 18th at 6 p.m. Again, check our Facebook page because we'll have some information about those events on the page. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Unless so we're president, if you have something else, or vice president, if you have something else to share.
I'm just in awe. I'm ready to just dig into this book. I have not read it. I did purchase it, but even though some things are given away, it's okay. It just seems like it's very interesting. So I'm excited. I'd like to thank the Arts and Letters Committee for all the wonderful work that you're doing with the book club and bringing Melissa Lawson on here. And we are going to claim that Netflix or Lifetime, ABC, NBC, whoever picks it up, we're going to claim that it's already out there. Like to thank Soar Morella Holmes for moderating it. You're always bringing that spice to it. So thank you so much. And Soar Bowman, do you have something to say?
No, I have enjoyed reading. I have 20% left to read. And so I probably will be finishing the book today, and I'm sure I will be ordering book 2 as well. So thank you, Sora Lawson. We greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate the committee. We look forward to doing part 2.
Yes. In part 3 and part 4.
Yes. You have to start writing.
Part 1913. There we go.
Yes, and we are claiming that you will. We have spoken into existence because I too would like to visualize and see the story on screen.
Definitely, and I'll be sending you my headshot. So, just for your consideration. If I'd like to take one final photo, if I could. So, whoever is willing to turn their cameras on, so that I could just take a photo, that would be would really appreciate it, seeing all of your beautiful faces. So I'm going to give you like 3 seconds, and then I'm going to start snapping photos. Oh, look at all these lovely faces.
There we go.
Here we go. All right, 1, and here's another one. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay.
I just got back on. My computer went down.